Many of these items that I've described as part of the trustee guidelines or the trustee job description also fall under examples of board good practice. It's not uncommon for boards to hold a special meeting or board retreat, often in the early part of the year, to focus on strategic issues. And this session may be used to reinforce some essential agreements about how individual trustees behave and targets collectively as a board. Having a set of essential agreements ensures consistency and professionalism by all trustees and promotes commitment towards the school's stated goals. So, for example, this could be a session run by the chair, the head of school, or an external consultant that simply identifies common expectations and courtesies to ensure meetings are effective and impactful. These could include basic agreements to read materials prior to coming to meetings, to be punctual, to respect whomever is speaking and not to interrupt, etc. Also consider including any terms of reference for committees. These terms of reference are helpful in ensuring that all trustees are on the same page when it comes to the expectations and the remit of the committee. Whether it's a standing committee, that is, it meets regularly and is always needed, such as finance, or it may be an ad hoc committee or a task force. Having a clearly stated purpose for the committee, clarity about what responsibility the committee holds and the process for decision-making is important. So, for example, does the committee make recommendations to the whole board, and if so, how is that achieved? These terms of reference can also highlight key deadlines or cycles that need to be taken into consideration, such as dates for completed audits or annual meetings. Having a big picture insight into the whole year helps keep pace to the work that needs to be done. Since all trustees have a fiduciary duty, you'll need to have a comprehensive overview of the school's financial position, irrespective of whether you're taking part in the finance committee discussions. This means that you'll need to have information about the financial management processes, the current year's budget and up-to-date audited accounts. This can be supported by an annual report if that's available, as that would provide comprehensive background information and context for the financial overview. It's not uncommon for those trustees coming from non-business backgrounds to step back and leave the finance committee to handle all the financial issues. But that would be a mistake, and you'll need to make an effort to understand the school's financial position and liquidity. And if you can't understand the presentations, then the chances are other board members or parents wouldn't understand it either. And it may be worth having discussions within the board and within the finance committee about how to make the data more presentable. It's very useful to provide new trustees with the minutes of previous board meetings. However, you can see this would become overwhelming in the amount of documentation, and most of it would most likely remain unread. So arguably it's more valuable to have a running summary of major discussion points and decisions that have been taken. Obviously, creating this in the first place would require quite a bit of administrative support, but once it's up and running, it's relatively straightforward to simply add any significant discussion points or decisions. This summary document might help the new trustee that may be tempted to bring forward a pet idea to the board without the knowledge of the history of similar discussions having taken place in the past. Again, this summary could be split so that there are sections for finance or policy or development, etc. So, for example, if you wanted to raise the issue of school uniform or competitive sport, it would be useful to know if and when these issues have been discussed previously before bringing them up again. In addition to the comprehensive information pack, it's important to ensure that trustees have had a tour of the facilities so that there's a context for future decisions. New trustees may be outside of the school community, or they may be a parent, but that parent would be familiar with only one section of the school where his or her child is. And finally, remember the benefits in facilitating some informal discussions between existing trustees, especially the chair, and new trustees. While this is a great way to put people at ease, to get a feel for the important things that are happening, but it also encourages an open sort of question and answer session. It's generally much easier to ask and discuss these questions in an informal meeting rather than feeling somewhat embarrassed or ashamed of asking something in a board meeting. What is it they say? The only stupid question is the one that you don't ask. So what are the roles and goals of the Board of Trustees? Well, as the school's ultimate strategic and decision-making body, boards are in a unique position to consider the long-term success for the students and for the school itself. Of course, there's a temptation for new trustees to want to roll up their sleeves and get stuck into trying to solve problems, especially if they've been elected to the position or if they have a specific personal interest they want to explore at the board level. However, effective boards need to first understand what is the range of issues and how are they prioritized, as this will crucially lead to better questions at a time before strategies have been agreed. I'll be using the term generative governance, which explores the opportunity to frame problems and questions before strategies are considered. A board's primary responsibility is to hold the school in trust. You may understand this role as fiduciary stewardship, or the responsibility to ensure the long-term financial health of the school, for ensuring that there are sufficient resources and policies to support the work of the school going forward. Fiduciary is actually a legal and financial term that involves laws of trust, especially with regard to the relationship between trustees and the stakeholders. While fiduciary is often thought as limited to financial operations, the legal obligations fall to the Board of Trustees, and so too the ethical relationships. A fiduciary duty is an obligation to act in the best interest of another party. In this case, the stakeholders of the school, the parents, students, owners, employees. Therefore, a fiduciary capacity means holding someone to the higher standards of honesty and disclosure so that personal gain is not a motivation for the decision-making on the board, which is why trustees should be signing an annual declaration relating to conflict of interest. The board works with the leadership of the school and the stakeholders to create the school's vision and mission, along with the guiding statements and values that give purpose to the work in the school. It's the board that leads strategic thinking and the planning. The board takes keen oversight of evaluating the quality of the educational provisions and services provided. The board generally only has one direct employee, the head of school. Therefore, the recruitment, retention, and contractual arrangements with the head of school all fall directly under the board's work, as does building capacity and strong relationships with the head. Obviously, the school employs lots of teachers, administration, support staff, and a host of auxiliary and contract workers to ensure the school can run smoothly and deliver the educational programs and support services efficiently. So while the board doesn't involve itself with the day-to-day management of these people, it does have an important role to being responsible for the working conditions and policies that relate to employment contract and work within the school. So the board is responsible for ensuring the school is compliant with all the local and national regulations. While the day-to-day management is delegated to the head of school and the administrative functions within the school, nevertheless it falls to the board to ensure compliance. This would include all necessary licensing to operate as a school, whether as a not-for-profit trust or as a business. The way the school is structured will obviously have a significant impact on how taxes may be applied, etc. In addition to the business aspects, there are key operational functions within the school that could have a significant legal exposure if they were not done properly, such as employment laws and building regulations. We'll talk more about safeguarding in another section, but at this stage, all trustees need to be aware of shifting trends in education, particularly in international schools, that make it very important to have defined policies and procedures relating to safe recruitment of staff in the school, as well as rigorous procedures to ensure that the students are kept safe. International schools are structured very differently. While some are run as a not-for-profit parent boards, others may have strongly corporate governance structures, with all sorts of variations in between. Regardless, one of the other roles of the board, whether directly through the school administration or not, is to ensure communications are effective in building desirable relationships in the stakeholder community. The board is usually keen to understand trends in student enrollment and demographics, and while not getting involved themselves, they would be looking for relevant data that might help them to guide their decision-making process, to understand the context, to see the bigger picture. You may therefore want to ensure that you have summary information about current enrollment and trends over time, and keep this data in mind when reviewing the financial targets and cash flow. Now that you have a better understanding of the scope of information required to help new board members, and a reference tool for experienced trustees, what's your next step? Do you have all the information at your fingertips? What's required of the board, and what would be delegated to the school's leadership and administration to pull a comprehensive pack together?